because of the fact that we've been in this weird position of like, you know what, we're stuck at home, we're focusing on all the small little things, and we're actually looking at ourselves. It's almost really brought back those feelings of like, yeah, actually, you know what, this world is unfair.
So, in terms of like kind of bringing a story like that to life, like,
Mm.
on screen versus like voice acting, like what are the different skills that you sort of need to like utilize and, what are the differences between the two? I know it's very obviously different, but, explain it to
I
us
think,
laymen.
yeah, you know what, it is different, but like at the same time, it's genuinely about just being honest and telling a story. Ultimately, like, the thing is, it's like with voice acting, like it's yeah, it's about communicating and about making sure that you're clear, and there are all these different techniques about it. But at its core, at its base, it is just about being honest and delivering a story and communicating that story. I think, on the technical side, film and TV, and a lot of it is within the eyes, it's within the, it's the face, and also the body. And but in games, it's very much about the body and it is about the voice. But I think that there is very much at its core, at the core of the sort of storytelling and acting of it all. It really just comes down to being honest and being truthful to the character, and I think that's what I've been you know riding on. And I feel like it's I've always started on a technical level of like, okay, cool, this is a voiceover, so I should maybe make my voice deeper or something like this. But ultimately, like, that's all tricks. It's not about playing tricks, because I think the audience are a lot more clever than that, so they want to connect, and it's about finding a way of connecting on an honest level. And that really is ultimately the thing that kind of goes over everything. Like, really, I mean, yeah, as I said, technical differences, but ultimately there isn't really that much of a difference, to be honest.
Well, that's actually really helpful to hear, and actually a good segue into, if there are like any actors watching, do you have any advice for them who might want to make the jump into like the wonderful world of video games and like voice acting
Yeah.
in general?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's just about being honest to your craft, and I think, of course, like, if in whatever medium you're in and whatever sort of genre you're in, I think there is a sense of like, you've got to open yourself up to as much of the content that's already there of today. I remember, where before even knowing what drama school was, like, I'd never gone to the theater before. And I'd never, and I didn't even know that the National Theatre was a thing. Like, I didn't even know it existed. But I remember being like, okay, cool. If I want to do this, I've got to really be clued up on it. And I remember doing a lot of my own sort of, my own research, asking a lot of questions, and just really putting myself out there. I think it was just being brave and not being afraid to fail, but also knowing that when you do fail, you just learn from it. And yeah, I think that was it. Because I think that's when it comes to acting, it's a funny one, because everyone's journey is so different. Like, and again, and that's completely dependent on who you know, where you are at the time. So ultimately, it's about focusing on what you genuinely care about and why you're doing it. And I think this could be said with anything that you in any sort of profession. It's just focusing on that and just going for it and asking the questions and just putting yourself out there, really.
Yeah, I love to see it. So pivoting a little bit as we've like sort of touched on it. The world looks a little bit different. I don't know if you noticed, just a
Oh,
little bit.
absolutely. Just a tiny bit, yeah.
Just a tiny bit. Like, film, TV, and like the theater in particular have been like hard hit, but the games industry has sort of been primed for working, in these conditions. That's not to
Mm,
say that it's been easy by any means, and
yeah.
no one's like fully prepared to work during a pandemic. But generally we have like more remote working, like more online events and releases. What are some of the differences you've seen firsthand between the way that like games and then like film and TV and theater in general have responded to the pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's people are adapting. I think that's almost like it's human nature, right? To just adapt to whatever situation is thrown at you. And I think that the way in which things are working, I think the games industry is an interesting one. I feel like they've adapted the quickest because of the technology, because it is all mostly generally technology based. It's all about the tech. And if you've got a computer at home and if you've got access to an engine at home that you can code on or whatever, like it's fine. And artists sometimes, most of the time they always have they always have something that they're drawing on at home or working on at home. So they're kind of equipped for that as well within the games industry. So it's funny, but whereas with film and TV, I think that's it's been quite a shock, because that is all about actually grafting and working together physically in a space. And I think that's where a lot of the evolution has had to really, kind of kick in fast. I know that some productions are currently coming back on at the moment, and some are planned for next year, but I know also that productions are shutting down quickly, and that it is, things have gotten a lot more expensive because of testing and because of making sure that everyone is in a safe space. So yeah, it's been a definite learning curve. I mean, like for me, for example, this whole year I've auditioned for projects, but not heard anything, and that's normal as sometimes as an actor, but actually most of the time it's because those aren't starting anytime soon. And so I've literally this whole year just solidly been building my studio and working on stuff and writing stuff and just producing stuff, because again, outside it's I don't know if it's like a war zone to a degree. It's like it's generally terrifying, but yeah, nothing really is happening on that front.
Yeah, and it's a real shame because there are some wonderful people working it with some wonderful minds. Hopefully, I was gonna say hopefully the fire stops. I mean, hopefully it does.
Yeah, I think it will. And I
Yeah.
think this is the thing. It's like I think it's an endurance test. It's just about being resolute and kind of knowing that this will end, and you just got to keep that track of thought and knowing that that's going to happen. Because I think it's funny, this time I know for a fact it's been tough, because even people in the studio, in my game studio, they found it's hard working from home in this isolation. It's terrifying, because it's you're missing that actual human connection that you might have, that you don't really necessarily think too much about when it's happening, but now when you are forced to stay within a sort of vicinity or away from people because of the fear of death, it's like it's really heavy. And I think it is just about trying to find ways of communicating with people online and sharing that kind of space with them, and also being, again, open about how you're feeling. And I think that's something that we were really, and again, as I said, like this is something that I've learned this year in regards to with and running the studio with Mel. It's this feeling of like we've really got to look out for people, and we've really got to connect and actually talk to people, because it's a thing. The idea, some people aren't used to the idea of being in a space alone and not having that support. It's human. It's a human thing. So yeah.
All roads lead back to humanity, as it were, and just maintaining that sense of empathy, because I think it is easy to sort of lose that. But no, you're completely right. I mean, I bring up remote working in particular because it's cited as one of the ways to address the lack of diversity in both industries, really. Since the beginning of your career, what diversity shortcomings have you witnessed firsthand?
What do you mean? As in what from working from home?
Not necessarily working from home, because we'll get into that, but more in terms of I was trying to dance around it and be coy, but I know that
Don't be coy with me, Shay.
No,
don't be coy.
We're throwing that out of the window. We're throwing that out of the window.
Yeah.
As Black professionals,
yeah,
sometimes the creative world is not kind to us. So I just wanted to know about some of your experiences with that. Anything firsthand. You don't have to get into specifics, but just how you've dealt with that.
It's funny, you know what? It's one of those things that it's always been hard, but it's to the point where it's weird, because I think I remember at the beginning being very aware of people telling me, and even my parents, because they've had to experience living in a world where they've had to work 10 times harder than most people. And I think that it's been there was a time where I was almost like numb to it, and it became just normality. And like what has happened, especially with what's kind of escalated in this year, in lovely 2020, is the fact that we've been forced to be put in a place of isolation, of within ourselves, to reflect and look at not only ourselves but also outside and see what's going on. And then massive events that have happened, that are happening, but because of the fact, but this is, it's not, and it's like not new news. This is stuff that has been going on for years. And but because of the fact that we've been in this weird position of like, you know what, we're stuck at home, we're focusing on all the small little things, and we're actually looking at ourselves. It's almost really brought back those feelings of like, yeah, actually, you know what? This world is unfair. Like it's incredibly unfair, and it's built not to support properly people who are either socioeconomically different, or or even a different gender, or even ethically different nationality. Like it's wild, and it's like having now been forced to actually be home and actually look and reflect and see the news and all this sort of stuff. It's really kind of dawned on like come again, in the sense of like, oh yeah, okay, this is a really unbalanced world. Because it's funny, because again, like, I was out there, I was working, I was kind of doing my thing, and like, yeah, I knew about the differences and the hardships and all this sort of stuff, but a lot of the time, because you're moving so much, you kind of forget about that. But then when you're forced to not move and actually really focus, you then realize, yeah, there needs to be a change. And it's, yeah, I think that's what this whole time has really brought about, and really kind of made us really focus on. And I think that's, and I mean, like, I don't know whether to say it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely a forward thing, if that's even a thing. So yeah.